Hi friends, it's Carly and I'm back again with another manga review. Today I'm going to be talking about Beastars Volume 4, and before I get started I want to tell you about something I'm going to be trying and ask for a little bit of feedback for you when I'm finished. So typically when I do these manga reviews, I am reading the book right away and then just hopping on and sharing all of my thoughts as they come to me. And I really like doing it that way because I feel like it's a little bit more honest and it is more open to conversation. It's more inviting to conversation, which you guys know I'm always trying to do. What I don't like about that is that it leads me to kind of get caught on a track and forget some things that I want to talk about. So we've seen that in the past where I have said how I feel about something and then realize later that I missed an important point. Or when I watch a video back later, I realize, oh my gosh, I left out a whole chapter or a whole episode that I wanted to talk about. So I am going to be trying something today where I have made some notes on my phone here. So if you see me looking down, that'll be me checking my notes. And I have sort of reviewed those, and I still want to try to do stream of consciousness, just sort of sharing my thoughts on these bullet points, but I wanted to make sure that I don't miss anything in each volume. So after you've watched this video, please let me know what you think of this new style. If you prefer it the old way, or if you think this is a little bit more organized. I really don't want the video to be substantially longer than they are. I feel like 10 to 12 minutes is already pretty long. So if anything, I'd want to like reduce that. So if it ends up being too long for you, please tell me that. If you're okay with the length, I just really rely sort of on what you guys all prefer to make the decisions about what I come up with next. So with that all being said, thank you for watching this video and let's get started with the review. So the first thing that I want to say about Volume 4 was that I really felt that there was an insane amount of filler in this volume, which I have not experienced in the first 3 volumes. And as I'm saying this, I realize in looking at the things that felt like filler to me, some of them, I think, were meant to be really revelatory moments, but because they were either drawn so literally or so lazily, I really hate to even say, because I have not, as I said again, felt that way about any of this series. But there was just some really heavy-handed moments in this volume for me that just left me feeling not great about things in the beginning. So the first of those was the scene that the book opens with in chapter 1 with Haru and Louis. So we are given the image of Haru and Louis in bed together, and Haru is thinking of herself caught in this dense forest where she's always lost and vulnerable, but for some reason always finds herself back there again. And then we're taken to the image of her grasping Louis's horns. Then Louis recalls back to when he first met Haru, and it was because he was hiding out in the garden club's shed because he had shed his own antlers, which is very humiliating for male red deer, and he didn't want to be seen until he got his replacement antlers, or I guess they get false antlers to wear until their new ones come in. And she found him there and treated his wounds from where he had shed his antlers. So my problem with this is that I was so excited to see Haru and Louis together, to understand what that dynamic was. And the notion of their vulnerability together was drawn in such a literal way that it made it feel inauthentic. It was almost as if the author didn't trust us to be able to understand why these two characters might be vulnerable together, and so she just put it all out there in black and white, wrote the words very specifically, and drew the exact picture that went along with that. There was no nuance, there was no room for interpretation. It was just really hard-hitting, and she hasn't done that with us before, so I'm really unclear about why, or if I'm just reading this wrong, but I reread that scene several times and I, honest to God, just hated it. I understand the vulnerability that both Louis and Haru are going through, and I feel like that was portrayed pretty clearly through the first 3 volumes, just everything that they're going through and how they choose to deal with those issues. So when we finally get these characters to come together, it's really disappointing that we're not given a little bit more subtlety, a little bit more nuance, a little bit of room for, the development of that relationship and that point of view. And instead we're just smashed over the head with like, they're super vulnerable people. I really hated the way that was done. The second thing that I felt was all filler was the scene with Legoshi and Jack, where Jack finds the bunny X-rated magazine in Legoshi's dorm. It all sort of just ends with Jack realizing that Legoshi is probably in love with Haru, which we already knew, and saying that he should have been more sensitive to Legoshi's feelings. But this is over the course of maybe 12 pages, which is really frustrating because at this point, although they are roommates, Jack is really sort of a neutral character. We don't really get much of an idea about him. He is sort of Legoshi's sounding board, but he doesn't contribute much so far. So I was really frustrated to see so much time wasted on this thing that we already know why Legoshi bought that magazine. So that manufactured conflict or embarrassing moment was just not necessary for forwarding the narrative, and it didn't forward the narrative. It was almost as if it was put in there because it was like a filler episode of One Piece. They just threw those pages in because she didn't know what she was going to do next. So that really bothered me. And the episode with Louis being scratched by Bill, while it did lead to the telling of Louis' background story, I appreciated that. If you take those pages out completely, it does nothing to affect the story. We could have just gotten Louis' story, because in addition to Bill scratching Louis' hand and then calling him out and saying, I know about your background, then in the next chapter, when we actually learn about Louis' background, he wakes up from a nightmare that is prefaced with a bit of that story and then goes into the long flashback about that story. So the scene with Bill and Louis was useless, and it made me realize that Bill now really is sort of just a mechanic for forwarding the plot, but not being used very effectively, at least in this case. So in the black market, he was the device for us to learn about what the black market is and what goes on there. And then here, it was supposed to give us a little bit more insight into who Louis is, but it's clunky and not necessary. We didn't need him for that. So it was kind of frustrating to me to see Bill again in this volume, but not being developed as a character himself and pushing forward a story in a way that would have naturally unfolded on its own without that scene being present at all. Now I want to talk about the things that I like. I have not been very critical of this series thus far, and I hope that isn't off-putting, because I still love the series, but there were a lot of things that were different for me in this volume. And please share your thoughts in the comments about how you feel about any of those things that I just talked about. So for me personally, the dynamic character, and I think this is intentional, I think she is meant to be the star of this volume, is Juno. And what I thought was really interesting was that in the scene where she sort of pops up by Legoshi's side while he's working on the set and sort of gets him to help her with her dance routine for the Meteor Festival, I felt right away, even though she was sort of being portrayed as this cute, sweet, innocent girl who might have a little bit of a crush on Legoshi, I sort of had the sense straight away that this was a predatory act on her part, or not predatory, but conniving, that she was manipulating the situation to some end. And that ended up being true. She is very manipulative. And we see her when she realizes that the girls don't like her because she's so pretty and so talented. All the different ways that she finds to get these girls on her side, to compliment them and flatter them and take advantage of their skills and abilities to teach her something new or make them feel like they're teaching her something new so that she can humble herself to them and in doing so be liked even more. I really saw Juno as like a social media star in this scenario, that she's just campaigning essentially to all of her peers. So it was not surprising to me then when she had the conflict with Louis, where she basically asserted her carnivore dominance over him and said, I'm not going to let you take advantage of Legoshi. I'm not going to let you be the dominant person in this school. I'm going to be the Beastar, and you might as well just back out now. So I really wasn't surprised by that development of her character. But I was really happy to see the way that it unfolded. From the first manipulations of Legoshi, and I know that manipulation sounds like a harsh term. She really does seem to be a girl with a crush. So she might not even be 100% cognizant of her manipulation. She might think she's just going after the boy that she likes, but it is devious. She's inserting herself into places and situations in order to get a desired outcome for herself. So from that moment to the dancing moment, to the moment where she decides to defend Legoshi against Louis and potentially the student body against Louis and take her stand in that way, to the moment where she finds out that Legoshi is in love with Haru. And then we're left to wonder how responsible she is for the carnivore group that has decided to stand up against Louis, or how responsible she might be for Haru's kidnapping at the end of the volume. So I was really excited to see the way, and this is the writing that I love and that I've gotten used to in this series, and artwork, because I love the way that Juno is drawn. The progressive way that we get to see that she is a lot more aware than she seems to be. She's not just a pretty face. Like everyone else in the story, she has a plan and she is actively out there trying to make things happen. So I was really excited about her character development, and I cannot wait to see what goes on with her in the upcoming volumes. In this volume as well, this is sort of the final thing that I want to talk about, something that I thought was done so well and really just opens this whole series up for the kind of criticism that it's putting upon the real world, are the groups that are seeking to sort of oppose one another. So we're talking about, not only is it herbivores versus carnivores, it's species versus species, or interspecies relationships being frowned upon, even if it's a deer and a rabbit. It's much more taboo for a wolf and a rabbit, but these are all relationships that are taking place under the guise that when school is over, we all will fit into our particular roles. So when I learned about, or when I read about the carnivore plot against Louis becoming Beastar, it was really interesting to me who was participating in that. And when you look at the herbivore community, how they are supporting Louis, or how they feel about Louis, because it's all still very contentious. And it sort of begs the question, how many of the characters are defending a system that inherently works against them? You know, as human beings, and I think that this is drawn really well in the book, so as human beings, we know that even when the status quo isn't beneficial to us, it's just sort of our base instinct, you know, it's just sort of built into our nature to fight to defend what's normal, what we're used to, what we've always had. And we see that in the characters in Beastars, that those who are trying to buck the system, who are trying to be dominant in a system like this. So for Louis as a omnivore, or herbivore, I'm sorry, to rise to the top of the ladder and become Beastar is really sort of in opposition to nature. A carnivore would always dominate in that situation. So it is understandable then why so many people are opposed to Louis, but at the same time, there aren't a whole lot of others stepping in to oppose him. Juno is the only one, and she's doing it subversively. And all of the herbivores still sort of have this feeling, this niggling feeling inside that Louis is a jerk. They don't really like him. He isn't a guy with friends. So even though him bucking the system would benefit the herbivores, they're not really for him. And the carnivores certainly aren't really for him. And Haru, who loves him, is for him, but he isn't for them. You know, her support of them, or of him and his endeavors and his aspirations, doesn't support their relationship happening. So there's all of this conflict that is very steeped in societal norms and societal standards and what's okay to change and what's not, and how it really sort of highlights how unnatural this whole environment is to begin with. So I was really, really excited to see those more sort of socio-political commentaries happening in this volume too. But I think, let's see, I think that is all I wanted to talk about from my notes. I am very excited to see where the storyline with Haru goes. I wasn't surprised to see that happen in that way, but it'll be interesting to see how involved Louis is in recovering her, or will he do it as a politician, as someone who wants to be Beastar, or will he realize that his feelings for her are deeper? Obviously, Legoshi will not be able to stop. He's let her know that he's going to share his feelings, which she can guess at this point, but you know, he's going to be out to rescue her. Will Juno stand by his side and help him in her efforts to, you know, be Beastar, to sort of politicize herself and look like she's doing the right thing so that everybody likes her? Or will her jealousy overcome her and we find out that she actually had a part in that kidnapping? So this was a really good volume with an unfortunate amount of filler. Although a lot did happen. So I had some problems with a lot of it, and then it all came together in the end, and now I'm really excited and cannot wait to see what happens in Volume 5. There were a few images that I wanted to share. There were only a few, but I sort of really loved how even as they are friends, whenever Legoshi and Haru are together, he's sort of just looming over her creepily. He like becomes the night, and I just think that's really funny because he's so unaware of it. It's one of the few things to me that is comic relief in this book. I just think that's really funny. I really loved the scene where Legoshi is cautioning Haru against being so promiscuous, and I just thought it was incredibly profound how she talks about being prey and how you never know when your life could end. At any moment, a predator could swoop down and end your life. And she really sort of beautifully illustrates how she doesn't want to have that happen to her. She has no control over what predators do, and she couldn't protect herself if someone did try to attack her. So she wants to do everything she can to have the opportunity to experience real love before essentially she's killed. And I just thought the panel where she expresses that was really gorgeous. I just want to make sure that you can see it clearly. But I just really loved that image. I thought it really captured the feeling. And let's see, the last one was after the scene in the subway station where Legoshi is trying to talk to Haru and she gets frustrated and the police think he's attacking her, so they run from the cops and have to hide in a literal box. I just thought that these images were sort of telling about the plight of these two particular characters, and it also beautifully mirrored the attack at the end of the first volume when he wasn't able to control, Legoshi wasn't able to control his instincts, and that actually leads to the conversation about him wondering if Haru can ever feel safe with him. So these are my thoughts about Volume 4. I already suspect this video is a bit longer than I intended, but I kind of like that it was more organized and that I knew what I was going to go over. So tell me what you guys thought about that in the comments, please. I'm really glad to be back. It was a nice long break. We're going to get back to everything again. Thanks for everybody who hung out, everybody who watches this video. I appreciate you, and I will be working on more content in the coming days. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day. Bye, friends.